This book was created to celebrate Poetry Month at the library. It is a collection of poems with transition notes, which grew of their own power into a talk about poetry, the how and why of creating it. This event was conceived on March 18, just a few weeks ago. It was a Brigadoon kind of day. Remember Brigadoon, the musical, and these lyrics? What a day this has been, what a rare mood I'm in. Why, it's almost like being in love. Maybe the sun gave me the power, but I could swim like Loman and be home in half an hour. I'm all aglow and alive. I wonder if the flowers feel that way when they come out. The lyrics to that song were written by my neighbor who lived just a few doors down from me in Manhattan. Maybe you've heard of Lerner and Lowe. There was and is poetry in the air. So, come, it's spring, that wonderful time when flowers sprout out of branches that were bare. Poets, too, feel the perennial urge to draw with rhythm and rhyme. Magnolias send into the air sweet fragrance, and I, standing there, wrapped in awe of it, breathe and ask, Busy Blossom, what wisdom tutored you to do the wonderful things you do? You drew me with your fragrance sweet. Now I entreat, how can a stem cell, know what to do to make a blossom's dream come true? Do you not recall the weight of winter's ice? Do you not rehearse the hurt of losing limb and leaves? What courage gives you heart to do the wonderful things you do? A flower, busy being good, breathing in this heavenly scent, elevates and tutors too as I draw you. This thought comes through, just be and do and be it, and do it now. Hey, buds below, up is where to grow, up with which below can't compare with. Hurry, it's lovely up here. A life down a hole takes an awful toll. Wait a minute. Where did that come from? That's a song I heard a long time ago. It just popped up out of nowhere. Out of the blue. Sometimes the goings-on of life are interrupted. With a splash, from heaven there comes a meteorite and strikes the sea of thought. Impulses flash, making waves in patterns new to us. Still the tremble guide the pen, solidify the volatile, for it evaporates. Did you ever try to remember a dream? The sky is a graph, and it records the peak of every swell. Stop the clock. Pick a melody from time. Tie each note to staff and key. that others may recall that tune in another time and place, and feel the rhythm of the sea as it occurred, as it occurred, as it occurred to one. A song can lift us up or pull us down, make us laugh or cry. Bet you thought I was going to say frown, didn't you? Emotions stir the heart and mind with happiness or grief. To find relief, write your own. But how? Some poems come as the answer to a question, like, how do you write poetry? Writing poetry is a constant reaching for truth. You do it by holding real still and putting your hand up in the air where you can catch the waves of truth. Caught the current carries it to where it can be received, classified, and lastly amplified. Like water through a dam, it flows free, yet loans its power to thee and me. When I write a poem, I type it, center it, and then ask myself and others, what do you think it looks like? For instance, what do you think this looks like? Well, to me, it looked like Marilyn Monroe. And I thought, but how can that be? This is Miss M. She's a librarian, a modest 40-something, who dresses conservatively and wears little or no makeup. But it looks like Marilyn Monroe. So I showed it to Miss M. Her smile grew into a chuckle, and she said, I am getting married. That's how I look in my wedding dress. I guess the shape was right. A poet must trust his or her intuition. Miss M has a talent. She can recreate whatever she hears verbatim. To be fair, we all do this, more or less. Think of it. A song comes in the ear and then goes back here where it's recreated. And then out pops, hey buds below, up is where to grow. You know what I mean. Talking to Miss M, pronounced like the letter M, is like looking through a window with glass that's clean, clear, and true. Leaning on the library desk, her long blonde hair hangs like drapery, framing a face that listens well. Each word is sipped well, and I can tell that it is tasted too. Breathing in its spirit ignites a spark inside. When eyes light up, she shows me more than the poem that I spoke. Like laughing at a joke, we each enjoy the current set in motion. Such mutual devotion opens windows to fresh air, where swags of drapery sway, aware of images that we share. Through glass that's clean, clear, and fair. Nature has a way Nature has a way of bringing out the poet in all of us. Most of my early poems were written while walking poodles in Central Park. How many of you have been to New York City? Did you go to Central Park? Let's go there now for a poetry walk, shall we? We begin by crossing Fifth Avenue at 67th Street, near the Children's Zoo. It's a crisp autumn day, sunny and clear. We stop before a favorite tree, which stands atop a boulder, its roots wrapped around the rock. In a bright cerulean blue sky, golden leaves shimmer in the wind. It's rich. Warmed by the sun, we stand motionless and think. A breeze sets loose golden leaves which tumble through the sky like manna, blessing earth with its richness. The same force that pushes out gold draws forth green and fields in bare branches, multitudes of leaves unseen. "3303 is the day I got my first MacBook. It made it possible for me to type a poem, center it, and see what it looked like. Record it, add music made in GarageBand, add illustrations with special effects, and voila, it's a mini movie. To see Mana and Busy Blossom, you can go to YouTube, Dottie Fisher Campbell, and or to my website, www.artofdcpainterpoet.net. It's in your program. Years after Mana was written, it occurred to me that those golden leaves represented or were symbolic of my own bare branches, which were bare at that time. Out of these branches came hundreds of poems and sketches. Those sketches had a way of paying the rent. I love sketching people from life. When I first began, I tried painting a portrait of someone I did not know from a photograph. But it made me wonder. And I did what I do when I wonder. I wrote a poem. Portraits. How can you do a portrait of a person you do not know? From a photograph, you may learn the physics of the facial masses, how the shadows blink and fall, learn from gesture, expression, and surroundings too. But how do you know and show what's inside a man, what he thinks, what he hopes, that for which he aspires, unless there is exaggeration of color, line, chiaroscuro? But then you may say, that's just what the painter thinks, not what I really am. You mean what you think you are, for that's another face. Do you not have many? One for boss, one for spouse, still another for the kids. If there is a master able, let him compile that composite of you in time and space. But 'twould be something strange indeed, something we're not accustomed to. So, to suit the taste of masses, do something in between. One man, one face, one time, one place. Reflected on canvas through eyes devised to see the good. My mission was and is to look for, record, and thereby magnify these Platonic qualities: truth, beauty, knowledge, ideas, the good. My major paintings are often like poetry, to me anyway. This portrait of Gavin, boy with a flute. This was painted from life. When it got to a point when I needed something for his hands to be doing other than just scratching, so I painted in a flute. And that inadvertently gave it a universal theme. Namely, at least to me, we are all flutes of God. Daddy, why do you paint poetry? Why do you write poetry? A friend asked. I don't know, I said. It just comes. The next morning, a better answer came. The word for the day was afflatus, which means inspired. What a coincidence. Now, it just happened that was my niece's birthday. Her name is Wise, and she and her daughter both play the flute. Mix all those things together, and the outcome was a poem called Flute, or Little Toot. Soon after I moved to Germantown, Memphis, I was encouraged to enter a talent show, a church talent show. Participant ages ranged from 4 to 84. So, flute was a really good choice for that audience because I look like this and began like this. Whatever your age, this is for your inner child. Why does one write poetry? Why do we sing a song? Why do we play? Why do we play a tune? A tune, a tone, a tone, a tune. A riddy-doo-doo, that pipe a tune. A flute I play, a hollow tube. A riddy-doo-doo. I am a flute. A flute? A fluke? A flatus, a flute, a fluke. A flatus, a flute, a fluke. A flatus, a flute, a fluke. I don't know what it means, but I like the way it sounds. Around and around and around the sound. It tinkles and tinkles and tinkles about. How can a hollow tube to tune to tickle a top? A flatus, a flute, a fluke. When the wind whistles, when the wise blow, then we know a flatus, inflatus. A flatus is why I read you to play my flute. As I left the stage, the rector gave me a thumbs up, and a 4-year-old boy whispered in my ear, "You did good." They stilled my heart. But what that proved to me is that a poem can be appreciated at different levels. I assume that the rector got the deeper meaning that we are all flutes of God. Or perhaps he was just being kind. Reciting poetry to an appreciative audience is one of my greatest pleasures. So, when I finished writing flute, I rushed to the library for show and tell with Alfonso at the welcome desk. I showed him the poem and said, "What do you think it looks like?" A little girl standing next to us piped in, "That's a little person." Alfonso is quite a character. Allow me to introduce you. At the welcome desk, Alfonso greets you with a flair. He lets you know he's glad you're there. And if you came for show and tell, he'll reassure you're doing well. With spectacles perched at the end of his nose, he takes a pedantic pose. Your prose can now be read between the lines. Then, with a tilt of a head and a knowing smile, he lets you know he knows he's hearing overtones. Then, using a word you've never heard, he describes the very core and more, much more. All the time the telephone rings, he answers it with grace. Our library is a wonderful place with head and heart and grace. And thanks to friends like Sean and Jenny Day, we don't even have to pay. Unless, of course, we want to. Thank you for coming. It has been my pleasure. Namaste. And now it is time for questions and comments. But I would like to say thank you to my sponsors and to my photographer. Thank you.